Yeah, first of all, I just wanted you to explain what you mean by the term art utile.
Arte útil, because it's not only art or only útil, it's a combination of both and it's interdependent on each other. Útil in arte útil means not only the beneficial outcome that art can produce, a concrete beneficial outcome, but also art as a tool. So it's a conception where art is as a tool, is used as a tool for social change.
So we're in the room for propaganda, legitimation, and belief. And as the chief propagandist of Arte Utile, I'd also want to talk about the idea of legitimation and the methodologies that you and we as the museum have introduced. So perhaps you could talk a bit about the criteria and also about the introduction of a new vocabulary to deal with ideas around Arte Utile.
I think in terms of methodology, in my head was very clear what Arte Útil was, but when I needed to share with other people the selection process, we came up all together with the criteria. And these are these 8 points in which not all the work has to have the 8 points, but at least there are 4 fundamental points. One of them is to bring a new use for art or challenge the use art has, because Arte Útil is not only has 2 aspects. One is to propose a new use for art, a new way in which art can be used for something else other than its own practice, but also how to use all the benefits you have already in art to do things that otherwise you cannot do because it will be too long, too harsh in terms of bureaucracy, etc. So using those privileges, as I say. Another of the aspect is this idea, because we claim aesthetics, like we are interested in claiming aesthetic, it is art. So we are claiming in the criteria that is the aesthetic is seen as a transformation process, as a process of transformation. So the beauty, all the aesthetic elements are seen in a process of building up something. And we realized through going through all of this that some of the problems that happens when analyzing social engaged art, political art, sometimes and so on, that also happen in Arte Útil is that sometimes the practices are being analyzed through concepts that do not fit the practice. So therefore we sat together and we started challenging some of the main concepts, like a spectator, like author, we call initiator, spectator, we call user or activator. I mean, that still is going on. Our work is a case study. Production is implementation. And I feel like it was not a formal gesture. It was actually a conceptual gesture to claim that this concept have to have in themselves the practice, the laws of the practice, the guidelines of the practice itself, and hopefully that will be the guide that can help set up the conversation.
Yeah, if you could talk about your relationship with the institution a little bit.
I think it was quite easy, but I feel one of the main aspects was authorship, because I came with an idea that was not completely formed. And I actually asked from the institution to develop it together with me, or me together with them. So I feel that was a nice challenge. It was not a bad challenge. I think it was taken with a lot of enthusiasm by the curators of the show. And I think that was, for me, the most interesting part. And also even challenging this idea of like, who's the curator? Is it a team where nobody has an actual role, or yes, like we have very clear like who did the archive, like the research, like Hema and Alexandra did the archive, that's very clear. But at the same time, they gave us ideas for the show and we gave them ideas for the archive. So I feel like the porosity and the permeability of the structure that we have created, that is not only horizontal, but also very like, yeah, I think that was great because it feels like everybody's a creator. I think the most challenging part is how to activate the audience, so how to transform audience into users. And that might be the hardest part with the institution, because the institution has a very clear mandate with the audience and with numbers. For example, I'm not so interested in that more people than, like we have, I don't want to have the most popular show, but I want to have the show where people spend more time in it. So it's more about the quality time instead of like the quantity. And I think that's something that usually every museum has to struggle with. The fact that we might put rules into the way in which people engage in the show might be challenging for the institution as well, because probably not everybody is going to see the whole project, and that's not something that you usually want in an exhibition. But I think those are the interesting points, and I think, yeah. And I have been challenged by the institution as well, because sometimes they have pushed me to think further, you know, so it's not only one way. So, yeah.
A museum of art utile, practice that happens in the world on a one-to-one scale. What happens when you bring that practice into the museum?
I think institutions are more and more interested in catching up with art production, and in this case with social practices. But I feel that I wanted to make a comment also on what are the elements that could be, let's say, more taken care of or more preserved when coming to the institution, and what does it mean to institutionalize a process of a living work. And I feel like some people have tell me, why do I need to do a museum? And it's precisely to cut the attention of people in institution and also to artists about the challenges you have when inevitably your practice is going to be institutionalized. And also because I feel that museums have also a responsibility to be civic institutions.
And why track a movement? Why name a movement as an artist, and why track a movement? Aren't we against the idea of a canon of art history? Why do that inside a museum?
I feel that, I mean, arte útil, without being named that way, probably, or sometimes yes, because in 1981 there was an exhibition called Useful Art in the Queen's Museum. But of course, the way they saw the usefulness of art was the beautification of already useful art objects. In our case, we're trying to bring what we call aesthetics, which is the beauty of the ethics that is generated through the process of working in the real and with change. What happened is like, I felt it was interesting. I was looking for ways and forms in which to bring the conversation to a level that more people were involved in the discussion. And I felt like we already did some discussion about practitioners. We already did like a magazine, one issue of a magazine in Spain called Contraindicaciones, only about this. And I realized that the discussion was very small. Like this, you know, and only the people who were already interested were talking about it. So I feel like bringing the museum into it, it involved more partners and more parties into the discussion, even if they don't want to be part of the discussion.
And then lastly, I just want to ask you, do you think all art should be utile?
As a propagandist in chief, I will say yes. No, I think seriously, I feel that we are already 2013, so 13 into the new century, and most of the work we think about or we produce is still using the structure and the mind structure and the way of thinking about art of the 20th century, which is a different century. So hopefully, yes, hopefully. At least if not all art should be utile, at least they can be utile and then something else later.